If you look at what's happening between Washington and Ottawa right now, it doesn't look like a negotiation. It doesn't look like a spat between neighbors. It looks like a controlled demolition of 70 years of North American dominance. Not with missiles, not with soldiers, with phone calls, plane tickets, and signatures on documents that Washington wasn't invited to sign. For decades, the United States and Canada shared the most integrated economy on the planet. Two nations, one machine, seamless, efficient, invisible. But as of this week, Canada picked up a pen and started rewriting the blueprint. And the White House didn't see it coming until the ink was already dry. Donald Trump called Canada's military contributions participation trophies. He questioned the value of 457 Canadian casualties across Allied operations. He treated America's closest ally like an adversary and assumed Ottawa would fold. Mark Carney's response wasn't a press conference. It wasn't a tweet. It was a strategy. While Trump was raging at rallies, Carney was on encrypted calls with Brussels, Munich, and Tokyo. What Canada signed, announced, and activated in the past 72 hours is going to reshape the architecture of the Western world for a generation. The shockwaves are already moving through defense markets, energy negotiations, and diplomatic channels. And most of the media is still talking about the insults instead of the restructuring. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what just happened, why Washington never saw it coming, and why the world you're living in today looks fundamentally different from the one you woke up in a week ago. But first, think about this. If your most reliable business partner kept undermining your credibility, threatening to tear up your contracts, and calling your work worthless, how long before you quietly started building relationships with their competitors? Hold that thought, because that is exactly what Canada just did. And they didn't just threaten it, they executed it. Drop your answer in the comments. Is Canada protecting itself? Or is this a dangerous gamble that could destabilize the entire Western alliance? Let's rewind the clock to understand how we got here, because this didn't start last week. It started in Davos in late January 2026. Trump stood before global leaders and called Canada's military contributions participation trophies. He questioned the value of shared sacrifice going back to World War I. He treated the nation that literally shares the longest undefended border in human history like a freeloading tenant. The insult wasn't just political rhetoric. It was a miscalculation, because the man sitting on the other side of that insult wasn't a traditional politician who would call an emergency press conference and demand an apology. Carney is a former central banker who ran the Bank of England through the 2008 financial crisis. He doesn't do outrage. He does positioning. And the moment Trump delivered that insult, Carney activated contingencies that had been quietly building since the day he took office. Here's what actually happened in the past 72 hours. 3 moves, 3 receipts, and each one hit Washington like a different kind of freight train. Receipt number 1, the Euro Group. On February 16th, Canada's Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, sat down at a Eurogroup working dinner in Brussels. Now stop right there. The Eurogroup is the meeting of Eurozone finance ministers, the inner circle of European economic governance. Canada is not in the Eurozone. Canada is not in the European Union. No non-European finance minister has ever been invited to sit at that table as a strategic partner. Until now. The Eurogroup president, Greece's Kyriakos Pyrakakis, personally extended the invitation. The official purpose was to develop common commitments on economic security and global financial stability. But read between those lines. Economic security in diplomatic language means one thing right now. How do we reduce dependence on a partner we can no longer trust? Europe looked at Washington and saw chaos. They looked at Ottawa and saw a G7 democracy with rule of law, free trade agreements, and a finance minister who speaks their language. Within 90 minutes of the Eurogroup session opening, currency markets moved. The signal was received. Washington wasn't in the room. And that silence was deafening. Receipt number 2, the SAFE program. On February 15th, at the Munich Security Conference, Canada's Defence Minister, David McGuinty, signed on to the European Union's €150 billion Security Action for Europe program. This is the EU's flagship defence rearmament initiative. The program specifically designed to wean Europe off dependence on American military supply chains. Canada just became the first non-European country in history to join it. Canadian defense companies can now partner with European peers to bid on joint projects and access preferential financing worth hundreds of millions of euros. Think about what that means. Canada, America's closest military ally, the country that shares NORAD, shares intelligence, shares everything, just joined a defense program explicitly built to reduce reliance on the United States. The agreement was built on the security and defense partnership Carney signed with the European Union in Brussels last June. He had been laying this groundwork for months while Washington was busy posting about participation trophies. Carney was building the bypass, while Trump was building the grievance. That's the difference between tactics and strategy. Receipt number 3, Munich. Canada also signed a military-industrial memorandum with Denmark and a joint declaration with Germany on artificial intelligence and technology sovereignty. A declaration with Germany on AI sovereignty, signed in Munich, without American input. If you understand what that means, you already see the tremor that Washington is feeling. Whoever sets the standards for artificial intelligence and digital trade controls the architecture of the next industrial revolution. Canada and Germany just started writing those standards together. Carney had been scheduled to personally oversee every one of these signings and meet with the leaders of Greenland, Denmark, Ukraine, Germany, Spain, Finland, Norway, and the European Union, plus a delegation of U.S. senators, before a tragic mass shooting in British Columbia forced him to cancel and return home. He canceled his own historic diplomatic moment to go home. That is a prime minister who understands that governing is about people, not optics. The deals got signed anyway, and the world took note. So why is all of this happening right now? Because Trump's strategy has a fatal structural flaw that he has never understood. His entire playbook relies on isolation. He needs every target to believe they are alone. He told Canada, you are alone against the American economy. He told Europe, you are alone against Russia. He told Australia, you are alone against China. The moment he pushes too hard, those isolated targets stop looking at him and start looking at each other. Trump escalated tariffs on Canadian steel. Carney called Brussels. Trump questioned NATO commitments. Europe started building SAFE. Trump threatened to annex Greenland. Denmark started coordinating with Ottawa. Every single time Trump swings the stick, he does not get obedience. He gets fragmentation. He is assembling the exact coalition he feared most, a network of democracies that have priced in his anger and decided to move forward anyway. One Canadian security expert called Carney's Davos speech a call to action for middle powers to stop trying to mollify a bully and forge their own future. That call is being answered in real time. If this story is connecting dots you haven't seen assembled anywhere else, you're already ahead of 90% of the people watching this situation unfold. But the most consequential chapter is still ahead. The submarine decision, the fighter jet review, and the critical minerals play that could permanently shift resource power away from Washington. Hit subscribe right now. This is moving faster than any single outlet can track, and you need to be here when the next piece drops. Now let's talk about the man running this operation, because what Carney is doing deserves to be understood clearly. Most leaders, when attacked by a U.S. president, get defensive. They wave the flag, give angry speeches, try to look tough for the home crowd. Carney did none of that. He went to work. He understands something fundamental about modern power. It is no longer about who has the biggest aircraft carriers. It is about who controls critical resources, who writes the rules of trade, and who builds the systems that others depend on. While Trump obsesses over tariffs, a 19th century economic weapon, Carney is constructing a 21st century network. He signed a defense partnership with the EU. He joined the SAFE program. He sent his finance minister to the Eurogroup. He signed an AI declaration with Germany. He has Canada in discussions to sell liquefied natural gas to Europe and Asia through Pacific terminals. He is reviewing the F-35 fighter jet contract, worth billions to American defense contractors. He is holding competitive bids between a German submarine manufacturer and a South Korean firm for Canada's next submarine fleet. Each of these moves sends a message Washington cannot ignore. Canada has options, and Canada is exercising them. You do not fight a bully by matching his aggression. You fight him by making him irrelevant. Carney is not fighting Trump. He is routing around him.
Here is the part that should keep Washington up at night.
The Canada-EU Security and Defence Partnership, signed in June 2025, which formed the legal foundation for everything signed in Munich this week, isn't just a document. It is the skeleton of an alternative Western architecture, one that includes Canada, the European Union, Germany, Denmark, potentially the UK, all coordinating on defense procurement, AI standards, digital trade, and critical minerals without routing those decisions through Washington. Canada controls vast reserves of lithium, cobalt, uranium, and rare earth elements, the materials you need for electric vehicles, missiles, and the entire infrastructure of the future. By deepening these European partnerships, Carney is telling the global market that if you want the raw materials to build tomorrow, you come to this table. And Washington does not set the price. So what does this mean for you, wherever you are watching from? If you live in the United States, this restructuring has a cost that will reach your daily life. Defense contracts that used to go to American firms are now being bid out to European and Asian competitors. Fighter jet contracts worth billions, submarine deals worth more billions. Canada is reviewing all of it. Supply chains built on the assumption of seamless Canada-US integration are being stress tested. And the longer this hostility continues, the more permanent those alternative routes become. Once a company restructures its supply chain around a new partner, it does not restructure back when the political climate improves. The jobs, the contracts, the economic activity, they follow the new routes, and they don't come back. If you work in defense manufacturing, in energy, in tech, these are not abstract geopolitical developments. These are structural changes to the markets that pay your salary. Here is the hard truth that Washington needs to hear. Carney did not want to spend his first year as Prime Minister redesigning Canada's strategic partnerships. He wanted to govern a country. But Trump's hostility, his tariffs, his insults, his threats, they left Carney no choice. And here is what makes Carney genuinely dangerous as an adversary. He is not emotional about it. He is not doing this out of pride or anger. He is doing it because the math demands it. And when a former central banker decides the math demands a structural realignment, he does not half-measure it. He builds it to last. 3 scenarios are now in play, and none of them return us to the world of 3 weeks ago. The most likely path: corporate America eventually breaks. Defense contractors who watch Canadian submarine and fighter jet contracts go to European and Korean competitors start lobbying Washington hard. Energy companies who realize Canadian LNG is being routed to Asian markets instead of American refineries start calculating their losses. Republican governors in border states who watch supply chains quietly restructure start making noise. Trump, facing economic pain in states he needs, agrees to a face-saving summit. Carney, the pragmatist, offers an off-ramp. But the European and Munich partnerships stay in place. Canada has diversified, and that diversification is permanent. The relationship resets, but it never returns. The second scenario, the domino. Canada's success at the Eurogroup and in Munich inspires other middle powers to move faster. Australia, which is already hosting Carney for a parliamentary address in March, deepens its coordination. The UK, watching Canada access the SAFE program and the Eurogroup, accelerates its own reintegration with European defense structures. Japan and South Korea, which are competing to supply Canada's submarines, deepen resource and technology partnerships across the Pacific. The network Carney is building becomes self-reinforcing. Every new node makes the whole structure stronger. And Washington finds itself in a world where it is still the largest single economy, but no longer the axis around which the Western order rotates. The third scenario, escalation. Trump retaliates against the SAFE agreement. He threatens to pull intelligence sharing from Five Eyes. He pressures NATO allies to choose between Washington and the Canada-EU framework. This is the scenario nobody wants to name out loud because naming it makes it feel possible. But after threats to annex Greenland, after calling Canada a national security threat, after questioning NATO commitments on a public stage, Normal left the building a long time ago. What I know for certain, the relationship between the United States and Canada will never be the same. Even if Trump leaves office tomorrow, even if his successor calls Carney on day one, the lesson has been learned. Canada cannot put all its strategic eggs in one basket. Canada has options. Canada is exercising them. And once a country builds those alternative relationships, once those partnerships have legal frameworks and defense agreements and Eurogroup invitations behind them, they do not disappear when the political climate changes. They become the new normal. Carney didn't start this fight. He didn't want this fight. But he is proving to be extraordinarily good at it. Not because he is aggressive, because he is patient, precise, and operating on a time horizon that Trump cannot comprehend. Trump is looking at the next rally. Carney is looking at the next decade. And right now, the next decade is being built in Brussels, in Munich, in Canberra, everywhere except Washington. The question you have to sit with is this: did Mark Carney dismantle American strategic dominance over the Western alliance? Or did Donald Trump do that himself, and Carney is simply picking up the pieces and building something new? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe, because the next chapter, the submarine decision, the F-35 review, the LNG pivot to Asia, is coming fast. This story is not slowing down. Don't look away. This content is commentary and analysis for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or geopolitical advice. Consult qualified experts before making any decisions based on what you have heard here.